Welcome to this edition of Weather to Watch, Blowtorch Christmas. And it's not just Christmas that'll be warm, the entire week will be warm. And in particular, though, Christmas Day, it looks particularly toasty across much of the central U.S. Snow, pretty short chances to get that, really. Not a lot, a little bit. We'll talk about where. Also, heavy rain with the atmospheric river setting up in California. All that and more coming up. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining me. This is meteorologist Ted Keller, starting out with the visible satellite loop on this Saturday afternoon, last Saturday before Christmas. And you can still see there is some snow in the northern plains. You know that because it's not moving. But this is going to be rapidly disappearing over the next several days. We have just kind of a trail of cloudiness here connected to an upper level storm in the part in southern Canada, north of Lake Superior, and there's a pretty good shot of cold air coming in behind this. If we look at the 500 millibar pattern on top of this, this is a trough of low pressure, a pretty sharp shortwave moving through the northern plains. Generally, though, this is what we would call in weather circles, meteorological circles, a zonal pattern, and a fast one. The winds are moving fast at 500 millibars, but basically still from west to east, okay, with the exception of this short wave. And what's going to happen is there's going to be a huge ridge build up here over the next several days. It's going to lead to that warm temperature pattern for sure. At the surface here, this is model data, but it does show one front, the original one that came in kind of dissipating over Arkansas, Oklahoma, Texas, back into the northern Appalachians. And then this new push of cold air can be seen coming across Minnesota, North Dakota, into Wisconsin, UP of Michigan. This is the map forecast to be true at 6 p.m. And these are temperatures that actually have been recorded at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time, including a chilly 10 in Minneapolis, only 3 in Duluth, and below zero temperatures in northern North Dakota, around Lake of the Woods up there in northern Minnesota as well. So let's focus in a little bit more on that pattern shift that will bring the brown Christmas. This is the EPS Weekly. This map is produced twice and is always good for a 7-day period of just kind of averaging everything together. This is the 500 millibar flow. I show that a lot. It's between the surface of the Earth and what's considered the top of the atmosphere where all the weather occurs. So it's about midway through that, and it's a good reference point to kind of give general trends. So this is that ridge I was talking about. The colors are how abnormally high or low these lines are. So in other words, when they curve upwards or northwards like that, that's a ridge. And this tells me how much of a ridge this is when compared to what you normally see this time of year. So this is substantial over Kansas, Missouri, and Oklahoma and Arkansas, right in that general region there. This ridge means business. Meanwhile, it's a little troughy just off the both coasts, actually. So this is a pattern which really encourages warm temperatures here. And we can look at that too. So if you see some of these readings here, if it is this color, it's at least 20 degrees above normal. There are pockets here next week. Then again, this is an average over the 7-day period, beginning on this coming Monday. But I've seen 30 plus readings above what's considered the normal high. So like for instance, here in Springfield, where I live, our lowest point is in January, where the normal high is about 41 degrees, somewhere in there. We are going to experience a high of 74 probably on Christmas Day, way, way, way above normal. And it has an impact on snowfall. Snowfall rates, non-existent. In fact, where you see the orange color, that's the model saying, hey, I do expect there to be snowfall somewhere in here, and there's not going to be. And look, this is unusual too. If you look at the Great Lakes states, see these darker oranges right here? It's kind of fascinating because these are lake effect snows that are almost a sure bet this time of year, south of Lake Superior, on the lee side of Lake Michigan, and even over here in the parts of Ontario and Erie, those two lakes. Although you notice it wears off a little bit. That's because New England might actually have a little bit of snow during this 7-day period. And you can see the mountain snows here. But again, this lack of lake effect snow is totally because this ridge of high pressure is building in. There's no cold polar air blowing over the relatively warm waters of the lakes. So that particular process, which started out pretty good in November and early December, has been shut down until further notice. This is the total liquid precipitation expected over the next 5 days. I say that because it's not always rain in this. This, obviously down here is rain. Much of this is going to be rain, although some of this will be mixed with snow here as with this next little weather system was going to whip through. Remember the one I showed you with the sub-zero readings there in Minnesota? Well, that's going to kind of impact precipitation, at least for the first part of this 5-day period. Some snow, some rain out here in the Northwest. But look at these totals out here in California in particular. In fact, the state almost seems singled out. You probably heard people talk about the atmospheric river. One way to identify this is to take a look at PWAT. It's always fun to say it. PWAT, precipitable water. You can see why we abbreviate it. It's a long phrase. Anyway, this is the anomaly. So this is the GEFS. So this is a blend of all the ensemble runs. And basically, when you see this green color, this is where the term river comes from, because this right here tends to focus on narrow areas like you're seeing here. And indeed, this area here where Nevada kind of comes at an angle right there just off to the northeast of the San Francisco area, that's the focus area for this rain and the snow. So that's what the atmospheric river is. If you can get a ribbon of persistent higher moisture values in here. And by the way, precipitable water is if you take a column of air and just somehow magically remove all the vapor, make it liquid, and put it in a rain gauge. So this isn't an actual reading. This is actually a reading of whether it's above or below normal, what's expected, the anomaly. So it does show the river pretty well. And this only goes through Tuesday night. And in fact, this event will go on a little bit longer than that, a little bit into Christmas Eve and even maybe into Christmas Day. If we take a look at now zoomed in, the total, this is the liquid part of it. What you're seeing here are 20-inch liquid equivalent totals in the mountains, again, northeast of San Francisco and that area here. And even the lower valleys are going to see 1 to 2 inches. That's that purple color. And the yellow is 4 inches of rain. So pretty extensive. And this time of year, it's not unusual for California to get all the precipitation at once. Their climate very much kind of depends on this. So, it doesn't rain there much most of the year, which is why a lot of people live there. But in the wintertime, it's definitely their rain and snow season, and it's not unusual to get this type of river pattern. Of course, if you talk about climate change, you're not talking about the pattern itself. You're talking about the extremes that it reaches and how that figures into the long-term average, right? So the event is not that unusual. It's studying whether these are really extreme or not, or are becoming more extreme, that really counts. Anyway, enough of that. Flood watch in effect for, as you might guess, all these areas, because snow melt does occur, and this could be a problem in the lower valleys. So around Sacramento, for example, and Fresno, it doesn't have to rain as much as as the liquid equivalent in the mountains do, but once it melts and moves down, then that causes a flooding problem, to be sure. And in fact, if you look at the heavy rain hazard for tomorrow, this is the possibility that we're going to get the flash flood guidance. So moderate is right here. That's the second, right below the top. High is purple. So again, northeast of Sacramento and to the west of Carson City in this little pocket, pretty good chance that flash flooding guidance is going to be exceeded within 25 miles of a point. So that's Sunday. If we look ahead to Monday, it's just really a wash, rinse, and repeat type of situation. It's almost exactly in the same area. So again, these folks should be watching very carefully for flooding potential. And of course, the snow will continue to rack up. And if we're looking at the snowfall side of things, this is the GFSS for the through Thursday morning, through Christmas morning. And it only picks certain cities, like Reno, just over a foot of snow. And I don't have a map that actually shows this, but you can look at the scale down here to see that these are 5 foot plus snows that are occurring. Remember, see, 60 inches is right down here. So this is a serious snowfall. And as you might expect, they haven't pulled the trigger on extensive winter storm warnings yet. Just this little patch of the Sierra Nevada here with a winter storm watch everywhere else. This will be upgraded for sure. And while we're on the subject, there are some winter storm warnings around Yellowstone Park southward in western Wyoming. There, a small patch of Idaho, and also in the Cascades off to the west, or east, I should say, of the Seattle area. And as if it didn't already stick out on the page, the only real hazardous weather in the U.S., except for these high winds, expected downslope winds on Christmas Eve, is all this heavy precipitation out on the West Coast. And again, underline this one more time, the 6 to 10 day precipitation outlook is dry in the southeast and probably about normal precipitation in the central plains northeast, but again, high levels of precipitation of both rain and snow expected in Southern California and parts of Arizona, all of Arizona actually, and parts of New Mexico. That's the 6 to 10 day outlook. That begins the day after Christmas and goes through Tuesday of the following week. Let's take a look at those temperature trends. All right, so on Sunday, we still have the effects of that Arctic air I just showed you up here tonight. So highs will be below freezing where you see the this area right here, and the greens indicate below normal temperatures. The yellow and the warm colors indicate above normal. You can see readings, again, 59 degrees in Denver, pretty warm in places like Phoenix at 79 degrees. And again, the colors are not temperatures, they're departures from normal. So it's important to realize that, a high of 55 probably doesn't seem real warm to people living in Louisiana, but that's relatively blowtorch weather for people, let's say, in Nebraska this time of year. So let's move ahead. That's Sunday. Here is Tuesday. Look what's starting to happen here. The above normal pattern is just about everywhere except a little bit of Arctic intrusion in the northern plains there. Oops, sorry about that. And maybe a little bit in Maine. But again, the entire country very warm. I live in Springfield. The high is forecast to be 70 degrees. It's going to be 75 in Tulsa on Tuesday. And then if we move ahead to Christmas, look at this. These purple colors are 26 to 30 degrees above normal. And I've seen pockets either on Christmas or on the day after Christmas out here through parts of Oklahoma that could be as much as 35 degrees above their normal high temperature. By the way, if we hit 74 in Springfield, just a little local plug here, that would tie the record. And I believe it was established in 1889. That 74 would tie it. I think we're going to break it personally. And then, of course, it goes without saying that the 6 to 10 day temperature outlook, last map we'll look at, Friday through Tuesday, so the day after Christmas through next week, just about the entire country is going to be above normal with an extremely high confidence level of that. White Christmas, yeah, mountainous areas out here and maybe up in Maine. Maybe I kind of leave that out sometimes, but there's enough Arctic systems moving through on the downside of that ridge that could keep some of that in play. I'll give you more details if one of those little storms should happen to pop up. Thanks for watching this edition of Weather to Watch. It comes out every other day, or as the weather necessitates. Please remember to share this with your friends, subscribe to the channel, or at the very least, like what you just watched. Thanks.